Welcome to Burning Bright, a weekly podcast presenting poetry and prose from Passenger. January 16th is Robert Service's birthday. Robert Service was born in Lancashire, England, but spent time in and fell in love with the American and Canadian Northwest. He was inspired by stories about the Klondike Gold Rush at the end of the 19th century and became known as the Bard of the Yukon for the poems he wrote that were set there. His two best known and best remembered were The Shooting of Dan McGrew and one of my all-time favorites that starts and ends like this. There are strange things done in the midnight sun by the men who moil for gold. The Arctic trails have their secret tales that would make your blood run cold. The northern lights have seen queer sights, but the queerest they ever did see was that night on the marge of Lake LaBarge. I cremated Sam McGee. In honor of the cremation of Sam McGee and Robert Service's birthday, some pieces about the winter's cold. We'll start with Rebecca Leet's poem Buried Sound from the winter 2017 issue of Passenger. Rebecca said the poem was sparked by watching a robin tilt its head, seemingly listening hard to determine if there was a worm underground. She said, "Research informed me that contrary to what most people think, robins locate worms more by sight than sound. So I changed it to an owl." What does a great gray owl hear when a mouse burrows 2 feet under Arctic snow? Sound like a skater scraping ice or the dull grind of a garden auger? Does noise echo as though reverberating off culvert walls? If I could invade the sanctum of others' buried thoughts, what vibrations might I hear? Would a lover's unspoken anger crackle like distant lightning? A friend's private judgment groan like an old door closing? Rebecca Leet's poem, Buried Sound. John J. Hohn grew up in South Dakota and Minnesota. He said this next poem, quote, flows from my experience walking the 4 blocks after work from the bus stop to my home on a winter night in Detroit in the late 1960s. He said, the physical setting for the piece is exactly as I found it. Trudging from darkness and back into the light with each successive street light created the same rhythm of sunrise, sunset, with the cycle repeating as it does in life, ending ultimately with my arrival home. Here's John's poem, Winter Night Trek. Stepping into the late hour, leaving thoughts of work behind me on the overhead bus, I start for home. The rain the night before, freezing as it fell, glazed the trees and shrubs and grass. Twigs thick as my thumb. Streetlights spun shining branches into corded silver nets that crackled in the wind like fire overhead. My shadow falls in behind me as I approach each light, and mounts my shoulders the instant I pass under the flush of radiance. Then drops to earth and stretches slowly, full length, the snow-slick path ahead, as if burdened with concerns that outpace my gait. He must age faster than I on nights like this, stringing my vagrant thoughts through the glistening webs, while I lean into the gusts below, trudging into darkness at mid-block, my feet crunching in the cold beneath the icy rage. At last, a final light as I reach home. It will draw my stalker from the dark, and together we enter in. From Passenger's 2024 Poetry Contest issue, Winter Night Trek by John J. Hohn. Pamela Wynn said that although she's a longtime resident of Minnesota, she grew up among religious farm folk in the southern U.S., where there was often talk of signs regarding weather, crops, and matters of faith. She said her father's life was rooted in that culture, and that her poem, Signs of a Hard Winter Coming, grew out of her father's death. The poem begins with this quote from Sarah Baum, "Meaning doesn't exist unless you look for it. Spill, simmer, fall." Our father was a long time dying. Today, in muddled light, we wait. The ground must thaw. A queue has formed. Who knew so many would die this week? Our father was always on time. Never early, never late. And here he is at the end, in the back of a slow-moving line. My father believed in signs. This is what I saw on the day he died. Woodpeckers sharing a dying pine, geese bidding adios early, hawthorns loaded with red haws bright as blood, wax thickened on wild crab apples. My father is dead, leaving just enough light to make darkness visible. This is a sign. Pamela Wynn's poem, Sign of a Hard Winter Coming, from Passager's most recent issue, the 2025 Poetry Contest issue. Even as we're suffering the winter's cold, we know that it won't last forever. Leo Tolstoy said, "Just as one candle lights another and can light thousands of other candles, so one heart illuminates another heart, and can illuminate thousands of other hearts." To subscribe to, donate to, or learn more about Passager and its commitment to older writers, visit PassagerBooks.com. Passager offers a 25% discount on the books and journal issues featured here on Burning Bright. Visit our website to see what's on sale this week. For Christine, Roseanne, Mary, Asher, and the rest of the Passager staff, I'm John Shore.